There is someone you are still carrying. Maybe they left. Maybe they betrayed you. Maybe they simply stopped being who you thought they were, and you tell yourself you've moved on. But you haven't. Not really. Because moving on would mean their name doesn't tighten something behind your ribs at 2 in the morning. It would mean you've stopped replaying the conversation, the last one or the one you never got to have. You haven't let go. You've just gotten good at pretending. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire for nearly 2 decades, and he lost more than most men will ever have to lose. He wrote down what he learned, not for posterity, for himself alone, at the edge of his own breaking. What he wrote will undo something you have been carrying for a very long time. Around 170 AD, Marcus Aurelius is on campaign near the Danube. The cold is brutal. A general he trusted, a man who had eaten at his table, has just defected. Marcus does not rage. He sits. He writes. Begin the morning by saying to thyself, I shall meet with meddling, ungrateful, violent, treacherous men. All these things happen to them by reason of their ignorance of what is good and evil. Notice what he does not write. He does not write, and I will punish them. He writes, in essence, this is their nature, and I already knew it, and I am not surprised. This is not resignation. This is the most sophisticated form of emotional intelligence ever recorded. And it begins with one brutal truth. Other people will always act according to what they are, not what you need them to be, what they are. Everything that follows is built on that foundation. Truth 1. You were never in control of them. You believe, somewhere deep and unexamined, that if you had just said the right thing, loved them differently, worked harder, been more patient, they would have stayed, or stayed loyal. This belief is the source of all your grief, and it is a lie. Epictetus, who taught the generation before Marcus, had been a slave. His leg was broken by his own master. He observed it happening with a kind of terrible calm. He taught one thing above all: what is up to you, and what is not. Other people's choices are never up to you. Never. When you grieve someone's absence as though you failed, as though you had the power to determine their choices, you are taking credit for something that was never yours to control. The moment you stop believing you could have changed them, the grief changes shape entirely. It becomes something you can actually put down. But when you put it down, most people discover something they didn't expect. Truth 2. A grudge is not justice. It is a tax. You think holding a grudge is a form of power. You think if you release it, you are letting them win. Marcus Aurelius would tell you this: you are taxing yourself for a crime someone else committed. Every hour you spend rehearsing the wrong they did, sharpening the argument, decorating the wound, is an hour extracted from your own life. Your focus, your presence with the people who are actually here. The person who wronged you is not paying that tax. Only you are. When Marcus finally allowed his forces to deal with the defecting general Avidius Cassius, he was reportedly more troubled by Cassius's death than relieved. He wanted to forgive him publicly. The death had robbed him of that chance. He wanted to forgive. Not because Cassius deserved it, because Marcus understood that the man who forgives is the man who gets to move forward. The man who withholds is the man who stays. Where are you still staying? Truth. 3. Grief and attachment are not the same thing. Grief is honest. Grief says, this mattered. This person was real. Their absence is a wound, and I am going to let the wound be a wound for a while. Attachment is different. Attachment says, I refuse to live in a world where this loss is real. I will replay their name and their face until reality relents. Marcus lost several of his children. He lost mentors. He lost friends in war. And in the Meditations, he writes not with numbness, but with a deliberate clarity. He reminds himself repeatedly, which means he had to keep reminding himself, that to love something is not to own it, that love without the demand for permanence is the only love that doesn't corrode into bitterness. Grieve what was real, then release the grip. Those are two separate acts, and you can do both. But releasing the grip requires something harder than most people are willing to do. Truth 4. People act according to their nature, and that is not a betrayal. Someone showed you exactly who they were, maybe slowly, maybe all at once, and you call it betrayal. Marcus Aurelius would ask, were they betraying you or simply being themselves? This is not a defense of people who harm you, it is a recalibration. Marcus writes that when a man acts wrongly, he does so out of ignorance, a blindness to what is actually good. You cannot give someone sight by resenting them for being blind. The wolf does not betray the sheep. The wolf is a wolf. Your grief comes from insisting the wolf should have been something else. Once you accept that people act from what they are, not from what you deserve, the anger cools into clarity. You stop asking, why did they do this to me, and start asking, what do I do now? That question is the only one that lives in territory you actually control. And yet, even knowing this, there is one mistake that keeps people locked. Truth 5. The past is not a place you are allowed to live. You revisit it constantly. The conversation, the moment, the version of them or of yourself that existed before the rupture. You go back the way you press a bruise to confirm it still hurts. Marcus writes, confine yourself to the present, not because the past is unimportant, but because the past is finished. You cannot alter it. You can only choose how much of your present, your actual living life, you sacrifice to standing over it. Every moment in the archive of an old wound is a moment not spent building something real. And here is the cruelty of nostalgia for pain. It keeps the person who hurt you central to your story. The only act that truly removes them is to become so absorbed in constructing your own life that there is no longer room for them to occupy. Build something. Fill the present so fully that the past has nowhere to stand. But there is one more layer, and almost no one sees it. Here is the turn everything has been building toward. Letting go is not forgetting. It is not excusing. It is not coldness. It is the decision to stop making someone else's behavior the organizing principle of your inner life. Marcus Aurelius did not release people because he didn't care. He released them because he cared deeply about the one life he was certain he had, his. The life happening right now. Every person you refuse to release is a person you have given authority over your present. They determine your mood, your energy, what you think about in the silence. Releasing them is not mercy extended to them. It is sovereignty reclaimed for yourself. The man who can let go without bitterness or without collapse cannot be destabilized. Not because nothing touches him, but because nothing owns him. That is the inner stability Marcus was pointing toward, alone, writing to no one but himself at the edge of a winter campaign. There is someone you are still carrying. You know who it is. You've known since the first minute of this video. Marcus did not promise letting go would be easy. He promised something more useful. The alternative is a life lived in a room you are not required to stay in. Grieve what was real. That is right. But you do not grieve indefinitely. You do not build a house there. People act according to their nature. The past is finished. Grudges tax only the one who holds them. Marcus wrote this for himself. Every morning. Because he had to keep choosing it. So do you. Put it down. You are not required to carry what is already over.